Hello everybody, it's Sarah with Paint and Party. We are going to paint this cute fall scarecrow today. I think it's so fun. I had a lot of fun painting it. We've got kind of a lot of colors that this one has in it, but it's not something that you have to have. You could always change up the colors or mix some that you have, which I can show you guys along the way. But let me go through the supplies really quickly that I've got. I'm using an 11 by 14 canvas, but you could use smaller or larger, whatever you have on hand. You also will need a cup with some water, some paintbrushes. I have kind of a mixture of paintbrushes today. I've got some that I got at, I think just like Hobby Lobby or Michael's in one of the packages with all the different sizes. But I've got a really skinny brush. This one's a 3/4 inch. I've got a 1/2 inch, and then I've got kind of one that's in between that 1/2 inch and the skinny. But you can really use whatever you have on hand. As long as you have the big one, you'll need a skinny one, and like some sort of medium size, you should be good. I'm using a mixture between Apple Barrel and Folk Art paints today. Not really for any particular reason, it's just what I happen to have on hand. I've got this burnt umber, the brown. I've used a lot of that this fall. It seems like it's been in all of my paintings. I'm using just regular white and black, whatever brand you have. I've got Folk Art. This is called Calypso Sky, but you can use any turquoise. Or if you don't have turquoise and you wanted to use like green or even white, black, I think you could do really just about any color. I've got Folk Art Lipstick Red and Violet Pansy. These two I'm gonna mix together to make the flower and just some of the shading. But again, if you don't have those colors and you want to use something different, that's up to you. I've got Folk Art Pure Orange and Yellow Light. And I think that's it. So again, really as long as you have orange, yellow, dark brown, some white, you can kind of play with the other colors. So, and black, we did do black for the eyes. So, all right, well, let's get started. We're gonna first, we're gonna draw on some lines just to kind of give ourselves a guide of where we're going here. And I'm just gonna use yellow paint because it's easy to cover. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make this line and this line and these lines down here. Just super simple, just so we've kind of got a guide. And if yours is a little off, it's okay. I'm gonna just use this yellow paint. And I'm using the yellow paint because it's easy to cover up, okay? So I'm coming down about 1/3 of the way. And these lines are just a guide, right? So you can cover them up if you feel like you got them a little off. So I'm just doing the brim of the hat here, guys. And then down here, it kind of like rounds off his face where we're gonna have like part of his shirt or bandana or whatever you wanna call this down here. Okay. All right, so that's just gonna be kind of our starting point. We're gonna work on the hat first, and we're gonna kind of work our way down, okay? So what we're gonna do, we're gonna use this big brush. We're gonna use the orange paint. I don't really have any water or anything on it. And what I'm gonna do is I'm making my brush strokes go this way because the hat has like shading that goes that way. So we're just gonna keep with that theme. Now, if your paint starts to get thick or you feel like my full cart paint orange is really thick, so I'm gonna add a little bit of water to it. And we will do a second coat, so you don't have to worry a whole lot about brush stroke lines and all that stuff in this coat, because we're gonna come back and do shading and stuff on top. I just want to get it covered. And I'm gonna go ahead and put some orange on the top here. And I'm gonna put a little bit of orange on the side, just on the top where the hat is. And I just went right over those yellow lines, like no big deal. We're just gonna cover them right up. Okay. I'm just smoothing out that paint a little bit. It's still wet, so I can do that. Okay, I'm gonna rinse that brush. Okay, so we're gonna let that orange dry a little bit before we put the brown on, and we're gonna move down to the face, okay? So I'm gonna rinse that orange out. We wanna make sure it's pretty good and clean, okay? So this face, I mixed some colors together, all right? So before you start mixing, what we wanna do, we're gonna have a lot more white. We're gonna mix a little bit of brown and a teeny bit of yellow, okay? So what I want you guys to do is just like take some white on your plate. You don't need to take the whole pile, okay? Just kind of scooch some over. And I'm gonna do the same thing with the brown, but I'm barely gonna put any in there. See, I just put a teeny bit and it really darkens it, okay? Now I'm gonna go ahead and just get some of this paint off my brush. And then I'm gonna take a teeny bit of yellow. Okay, so that's the color we're going for right there. It's like a yellowy with some tan in it. So I've got my big brush. We're gonna come onto the canvas, and we're not putting it on there perfectly. We want some of those different colors to show through. So we'll have some yellow peeking through, we'll have some of that darker brown peeking through. And I'm just doing some X's. So if you've painted with me a lot before, you've probably done this brush stroke. But so you just take your big brush. I don't have any water on there, just my paint. And you don't need to mix your colors all together unless you want just a plain tan color. Okay. And I'm kind of going over on the hat, and that's okay, because that brown is going to cover it right up, and it's going to help us just make a smoother line. Got a little bit of dark in there, but I kind of like that. Okay. So super simple, easy peasy. If you've got a place where you've got too much yellow, or maybe you don't like it, the best thing to do is to let it completely dry. And then I'm just getting my sides here, guys. And then after it dries, you can go over it with some white or whatever color you want to make it, you know, look how you want it to look. But really, unless you got it too dark, which happens, it's kind of hard to mix those dark colors sometimes. But less is definitely more. You can always add more, okay? All right, so we want to let these dry before we put the face on. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna move on to some other elements, and then we'll come back and we'll put the face on and all that good stuff. Now, I know I paint fast, so if you've painted with me online before, I say all the time, pause me, come back. You know, I don't want to make a 2-hour video for every painting. My phone would have no more memory, but I just, you know, I think it's easier for you guys just to pause me. So if you want to get out your hair dryer and dry your paint, or take a break to do the dishes, by all means do, okay? All right, so next step, guys, we're gonna do this brown on our little hat there, okay? So I rinsed my brush, and my paints are still a little bit wet, the orange and white mixture, but I'm okay with that because we're gonna do 2 layers. So really, I'm just getting kind of a good foundation on here. So I'm just putting straight dark brown, and I'm gonna kind of go over the orange where I went into the brim. And remember, guys, this is a scarecrow, so he's probably has on like tattered and worn hat, whatever it's made out of. So these lines don't need to be perfect. I'm bringing it off the side a little bit there. As you can see, it just kind of gives it a little bit more of a finished look. Now, I paint all the time, right? So I feel comfortable getting these lines with my big brush, okay? You may not. If you want to get out like a skinny brush or your medium-sized brush, by all means do. But I also encourage you guys to take a step back after you do any kind of lines and look at it, because up close we're critiquing it, right? So if you step back a little bit, a lot of times you don't see those little imperfections. Sometimes you do, but okay. All right, so it's kind of coming together, looking like a scarecrow. So I'm gonna give that orange some more time to dry. Gonna give the hat some time to dry, and the face, okay? And we're gonna do the turquoise down here. So you may have kind of lost your lines like I did. I went over them a little bit, but you can recreate them pretty easy. So I've got straight turquoise on my brush. And we're just gonna kind of give it a coat. Now, if you don't have turquoise paint and you want some, you can add, like if you have the primary colors, so you can mix some green and yellow and white, and you can make a like a version of turquoise. So that's always kind of fun. Okay. And then we'll do this side, and they don't have to be like symmetrical. Mine aren't, because he's kind of like tilted to the side, which may drive some of you crazy with their OCD. I know who you are. I'm just kidding. I have painted with an OCD person or two in my life. 1 or 2 of you guys. All right. The bottom. Oops. Okay, so he's coming together. His face is looking a little dry. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just pull out my hairdryer and just get him completely dry, and then we can move on to some shading and some different elements of his face. But take your time, finish up whatever you need to, and then we can come back and we'll do like the hay and all the different spots, okay? Okay, so my scarecrow's really good and dry. We're gonna go back and do some shading on the hat, okay? So we're still just gonna stick with this big brush. And my orange is like kind of a little, I don't know, you can see through it in some spaces, but that's okay, because I'm gonna add some brown and some white and just some different colors in here. So I've got orange on my brush, and I'm gonna add just the teeniest bit of brown. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start at the brim. And remember, we're gonna do another coat, okay? So it's okay if you get some orange on the brim. And we're just gonna kind of drag more paint. And you can do straight orange, depending on how kind of shaded you want it to be. You can add some white. You can even add a little bit of yellow in there. I am like a big fan of mixing colors. I put some white water in my orange. It's just thick. Anyway, I'm a big fan of mixing colors. So I feel like I'm always adding and shading and, you know, all that stuff. So if you want it to be a little bit more plain, that's okay. But I kind of like the variation of the different colors and if you notice, I'm not rinsing my brush. I'm just adding some shading in here, okay? And I'm making a mess of my brim, and I'm okay with that because we're gonna go back over it. It has shading in it as well, so it's okay. Just getting that edge there. And add a teeny bit of dark. Might even just add a little bit of the blue, just because I love that color. Okay. Super cute. Kind of soften those lines a little bit. The more paint you use, the easier it is to kind of shade and mix together. And you want to try to do it all while it's wet. Like, I know you may feel like it's going really fast, but it's best to do it while your paint is wet, while your canvas is wet. It's a lot easier to shade in this way with the wet paint. Okay, all right, so we're gonna let that be. And I'm gonna go ahead and mix up my cranberry color. So like I said in the beginning, if you didn't wanna use this color, if you don't have these, or you know, if you wanted to do something different, you completely could use a different color for the flower. And I just did some shading with this color. So I just squirted some purple and some red on there. Normally I would probably like drag them together, but I don't have a lot of room on my plate, so just kind of going for it here. I love this color. All right, so I have my cranberry color mixed up. We're gonna go ahead and work on the face. If these circles and different things make you nervous, you can always sketch them on with a pencil beforehand if that makes you feel a little bit better. I totally get it. It's sometimes a little nerve-wracking just to make a circle, or I'm going to start with some black to make these circles. Now, if you want to pause me and do a little tracing, I would just use like a pencil, something that you can erase, okay? When I do eyes, I always find the center, and then we're gonna come down just a little bit, and I'm gonna make 2 dots. Okay, and keep in mind that his hat is kind of angled. I'm gonna just always go a little smaller than you think you wanna be, because inevitably you're gonna have to like make one a little bigger. Okay, so you can see mine are definitely not perfect. So I'm gonna have to go back and just make this one a little taller to match the other one. Okay. Now I'm gonna go ahead and fill those in, and then I'm gonna kind of hold it back and look and see if I need to add anywhere, but I'm just using my skinny brush, straight black paint. Okay, so we have his eyes on, and I think I'm pretty happy with the way they look. I'm gonna just leave them, and we're gonna do the nose. So we just need skinny brush and a little bit of orange paint, and the tip of the triangle goes right between the eyes. So it's up pretty far and makes smaller than you think you need. And we're just gonna fill this in with orange. And then when it dries and when we go back to do the white in the eyes, we'll add some extra like shading on there. I'm gonna make it just a little fatter there. And everybody's is gonna look different. It's like when we do the snowmen with the carrot nose, they're always different. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna rinse that little brush. And then I did kind of a squirrely line for the mouth, but you could do a straight line. You could do like X's. You know, you could even Google like different, you know, scarecrow mouths if you want to go that far. Okay, so I've got skinny brush, black paint, no water. If your paint is getting kind of dry, you can always water it down a little bit, but you want to make sure that your paintbrush is pretty dry. All right, so I like to just do the whole line. I'm just swirling, and I'm making it kind of crooked, like this side up a little further, just because of the hat being crooked. But I like to make the whole line. Just get a little bit more paint on there, and then go back over it and thicken it up a little bit. And this would also be a place that you could use a Sharpie if you wanted to, or a paint pen. And then I just did little lines on the end. And you shouldn't need any like additional coats on that. You should be good with one coat and just kind of let that be. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna stick with my skinny brush. I've also got this kind of little little brush that I'm gonna use. If you don't have one of these, your skinny or your medium brush will work. But what I wanna do is I'm gonna make this like hay color. So what I did, I've got my yellow, just kind of dry a little. And I'm gonna take a little bit of brown and just mix it together. Not much brown at all. Goes a long way. And this is really the only thing that we're using this yellow for, so it's okay to kind of mix it all, swish it up, and kind of wipe my brush. And we're gonna do like a thick coat, because we only want to do one coat of this hay, okay? So make sure wherever you're going is dry. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna do just kind of like a swooping motion. So we're just gonna swoop the paint on. And we will go back and add a little bit of shading to that, but you want it to be pretty well covered and fairly thick, okay? So we're gonna just add a little bit more here. So a lot of paint, just kind of swoop it on there. And it's okay to drag some like brown through it too. Not a lot, but if your paint isn't completely mixed, that's good. Okay. And then I've got a little bit more here. So this is kind of coming out of the hat. Little swoopies. And then we're gonna do more here that's gonna go around that flower that we're gonna put there. So, and again, we're gonna add to this brim. So it's okay if you get some paint on it. I'll make that one a little bigger. Because you want it to be like it's sticking out of the bottom of the hat, right? So it's okay to get a little bit on that brown. All right, cool. All right, so my orange is really good and dry where I did my shading. So I'm gonna go ahead and do my blue square with my turquoise paint. I rinsed my brush out. Make sure you pause me. If I'm going too fast, just pause me and finish up, and then we'll go do the square. And I just did mine like a couple inches wide. It's not in any specific particular place. I just made a rectangle. And I'm just filling it in with this turquoisey color and this brush. Okay, and turquoise usually covers really well. You shouldn't have to do 2 coats on there. Okay. Now, I'm gonna go down here and I'm gonna add my shading. I'm gonna start with some brown, dark brown. And my yellow's still a little bit wet. So I've got this brush. You could use a skinny brush too. Whatever you feel comfortable with. I say go with it. So I'm just got a brown line. Some of my yellow drug through and I'm okay, I kind of like that. We're just adding some details that just give it more life. Okay. All right, now I'm just gonna wipe my brush off. And I'm gonna put some of this cranberry color that I mixed up earlier. So it's just red and purple. And I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna make some little shading. You can use your skinny brush or this brush. Okay. All right. So we want to make this little flower up here. It's the same color. It's that cranberry color. So I'm going to use my little brush. And we've got 4 petals. And it's okay for them to kind of come on top of. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And we're just going to give it the first coat. Doesn't have to be anything fancy because we're still going to do our dark on the brim. Okay. All right. Put that on there and let it dry. Okay. So, medium brush. We're going to do shading on the brim. So again, take your time on that flower. Pause me if you want to. All right, so we're gonna do dark brown. We're gonna also add some white in there. So I've got my medium brush and I'm just pulling some of that paint through, just kind of covering up my edges where I got some paint on there. Nothing too crazy. You can just get right up next to that flower. You can even go kind of on top of it if you want to. I probably should have done the flower after, huh? Okay, we can always go back over that little guy. Okay. So if you want it to be really shady, you can do some white. All I did was just stick some white on my brush. Okay. Do a little bit with the dark too. Okay. He's looking so cute. All right, so we have a few more details. So we're gonna put another coat on our flower when it dries. We've got shading on the square. We've got shading on the nose. We've got some eyeballs. So we've got a few things going on that we're still gonna do. So again, take your time. I'm gonna kind of work through his face here. So I'm gonna start with the eyeballs. I've got skinny brush. You could also use a white paint pen. You can use the brush or you can use the plastic end, whichever you feel more comfortable with. Be careful not to rest your arm on any wet paint. And I'm just gonna come in here at the bottom and just barely dab some white paint on. And it's just a little teeny circle. Okay. I think that really brings him to life. All right, and then I'm gonna put some orange on my brush. And just kind of fill this guy in a little bit. Brighten him up. And I'm just gonna leave that orange on my brush. Gonna go in with a little bit of brown. And I just wanna shade this. So I'm just coming in along the sides here and just barely giving it some color. Okay, it's not a solid line. Okay, so little brush, leave your orange on there. Just a little bit of brown. Okay. And I'm gonna do the same thing with some white up in the corner here. A little bit down here. Okay. Now, wipe my brush. This would also be another place that a Sharpie might be beneficial if you don't like to do the detail work. But we've just got little lines, so I'm using my skinny brush with some black paint. You could also use that dark brown if you wanted to. And if your paint is getting thick and gooey, put some water in it. And then just make sure you wipe off your brush because you don't want to get too much watered down paint on your canvas. It's never good. So really light touch for these lines. Super duper cute. All right, now while I have this black on my brush, we're gonna do just a quick outline on the top of this. Not really for any particular reason. I just think it helps to define where the hat is. And again, it just gives it like a little bit of that shading, curvature, all that good stuff. Okay. You could do one on the bottom too. I did not, but you could if you wanted to. All right, so let's go back to this guy. He's pretty good and dry. And what I did is I just added some of this like cranberry color in there. I've got this little kind of medium. And I just did some like hash marks. So if you think of like what an old worn patch would look like, that's really all I did, was just those little hashes. And then I outlined it. And I outlined it in black. You could outline it in any color, really. Would be cute in like yellow or so. But again, it's not a perfect outline. It's just kind of rustic and faded, tattered, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Super duper cute. Now my flower needs some work. He's looking pretty sad. So I just have a little bit of paint on here, but I think it's gonna come through for me. So I've got this mixture of the red and purple, and I'm gonna put just a little bit of white on my brush too. And I'm gonna come back in and just redo, whoa, a lot of white, it's okay. Come back in and just make my petals again because I kind of lost them. Okay, and we'll put a center in there that will make it kind of come together, okay? So the white and purple, you want it to kind of have some purple peek through and some white peek through in different areas. Okay. Cute. All right. All right, we're gonna let that dry a smidge. And I also did some shading on the hay, straw, whatever it is. So I just got my skinny brush with some dark brown paint. And all I did was come in and just do some little lines. Super light touch. If you don't like them, go over that. It's a little darker. You can always let it dry and go back in with your light with your yellow and it will cover it up. But I think it just gives it that little extra something that it needs. You could also do like a little bit of white shading in there if you wanted. But I kind of liked the brown. Oh, I don't want to forget this guy up here. Okay, he looks so cute. All right, we need to put a center on this flower. I chose to do turquoise and white. My burgundy's still a little wet, but I'm okay with that. And my paint is super thick, so I'm really globbing this on my little brush. And I'm coming into the center and I'm dabbing. It's almost just like sitting on top of that coat of paint. Okay. Gonna wipe that off. Put a big glob of white on and go in and just make a few little dots of white on top. So the trick is a lot of paint and barely dabbing. Okay. Now, if you felt like you needed to go in and shade your flower a little bit or anything like that, you could do that. You could add some like black to the edges or white. You could add shading really anywhere else you wanted. You could add more hay. But I think he looks pretty cute. He's a fun scarecrow. I think he'd be really fun out for Thanksgiving, for the holiday. You could simplify this a little bit and help your kids along the way. I think that would be fun too. But if you have any questions about the painting or anything else, let me know. And again, I'd love to see your finished painting. So I hope to see you again really soon, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.